Hello, everybody. We are your interference for the next couple of hours. It's fantastic to be back. This is the Spacebook, a bustling hub and home for all out there entertainment. And they don't come much more out there than the panel we've got on this show. Aside from that, there's decades of pop culture's good, bad, and ugly just lining the shelves and filling up playlists on Netflix or Prime or wherever else you go and you'll get your entertainment from. You download, you mainline, and feast on all those geeky treats. Barely a week goes by, of course, in the streaming age where some hot new show or even a straight to Netflix or Prime movie or whatever else gets released, and we've got to put it to the top, haven't we, of that list, the fabled list that none of us are ever destined to get to the bottom of, I think, by the looks of things. Yes, it all builds up and builds up and builds up. And where do we find the time, particularly when we want to go back and revisit some of those films and TV shows that mean the most to us from years gone by? And that's what we're all about here at the Spacebook Listed, going back through the decades, particularly to the analog era, and figuring out what is still worth watching, what stood the test of time, and what to recommend too, so that people come to you as a credible source for what's worth watching or rewatching. So yeah, get together with us here as we broadcast this show live on YouTube and to Facebook, to all our friends in the Spacebook's Facebook group over there and onto the page. Hit the little icon there. So that way, you see, Facebook will pick up who you are. Facebook will tell StreamYard, and StreamYard will tell us. And we'll be able to add your comments to the live chat, add your memories, and everybody can get into the mix on this round table show. We're talking about one thing specifically this time, celebrating a movie that's 41 years old and yet seems in many respects as fresh as ever. Certainly whenever I rewatch it, I rewatched it last year, I think it was, but all that iconography is, it's all the signature of a classic movie character that I think most of us have probably grown up with now. And it represented the coming together too, didn't it, of a pair of huge industry creatives, the like of which I couldn't help but make little kids, like I was, you think, he is working with him on what? And when it was released, it was a massive hit. And if you just mention the words Raiders of the Lost Ark, you instantly, that you hear the theme tune, don't you? And you picture the brim of that fedora cap and you hear the crack of a whip. That's when you know that we're talking about a genuine movie icon. And speaking about movie icons, it's time to bring on the mega geek in David Diaz.
Hello.
Hello, mate.
I'm all right. Yes, fine. Can't wait to talk about Raiders, one of my favourite films of all time. Oh,
yeah, we're back in our virtual VHS or DVD rental outlet here, aren't we, to pick our way through the shelves. But this particular film, I'm gathering by the state of your headgear, it means a lot to you.
It does. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a film that's part of my childhood. Every time I watch it, it always takes me back to being a kid. And I love it, from start to finish. And it's well directed by the master himself, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Star Wars fame, Close Encounters fame at the time. So, yeah, it's a great film. It's gone down in history. Out of every survey, when they say what is the top best films of all time, Raiders is always in the top 10. Yeah, it's always in the top 10.
Always really high up there. Yeah. And it means a lot to you. It means a lot to me as well, although I've got a slightly different history with it. I'll come to that later on. And let's see if it means a lot to them. We've got our friends. We're bringing everybody. It's like the round table on this show, isn't it? Yep. The Knights of the Round Table are all here. We've got Matt Pott from Tasmania. We've got Wendy from the Department of Wendology. We've got the one and only Mr. Terry Cooper on Tuesday. And making his way through the home media minefield, watching out for tripwires and whatever else, it's Keith Isles. Oh, it's great to have you all here. Hands up, who's an Indiana Jones fan? I thought you might say something like that. We're going to get stuck into Raiders of the Lost Ark through a very specific
British
lens
poster.
this time. It's I really like this one, and I really like this logo as well. And yet it's not so often seen. So I thought we'd start with that. And the general principle is, though, that I wanted to come at this slightly differently because with all of you guys that are here, you've all got very different relationships, I think, with film, with entertainment. Either you've made it, you've contributed to it, you've written about it, or you broadcast about it in one form or another. So I thought it was a good mix of people to get together with different skill sets to look at this classic piece of cinema and, crucially, the way it was actually made. Terry, you're the I think you're the sort of the closest I can think of as a master of all trades, really, when it comes to filmmaking. There's nothing that you haven't tried, is there, Ken?
You're just calling me a cowboy, aren't you? You'd be right.
Because I suspect...
And like Harrison Ford said, it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. It's the only reason I've done a bit of everything. But yes, what was your question again?
You've done a bit of everything. I mean,
master of everything.
Well, I wouldn't say I say attempter of everything. Yes,
you're certainly the master of masters.
But yeah, as far as Raiders go, like Ian said, it's part of almost everyone's childhood, isn't it? And like you said in the intro, you find out that Lucas is working with Spielberg on something that isn't, Star Wars. Like what? And weirdly enough, it's not the kind of thing that I would gravitate towards, a sort of 1940s adventure type thing. But
really?
The way they made it, the way they kind of reintroduced that show reel, is it show reel? What they got? Film reel?
You mean matinee, don't you? The Saturday morning matinee thing.
They just presented it honestly, no tongue in cheek, nothing. Just here it is, straight up adventure set in the 1940s, and it blew us all away, didn't it?
I think it was 30s.
Everything.
I think what it's got, how I describe it.
Is it the 30s?
1930.
I think so, yeah.
You're right,
I'd associate it more with a sort of RKO and Republic serials that they were still on when I was a kid at tea time,
And much like Star Wars was, Star Wars was a kind of throwback to Flash Gordon. This was, the RKO, more adventure-y stuff, the more kind of...
I thought it was a sci-fi when I read it in Starburst, because when they said Spielberg and Lucas are making Raiders of the Lost Ark, I thought I must be some kind of spaceship in space and they were raiding it or something, I
think the phrase that applies to this is, I think it's relentless, Wendy, and I think it's irresistible, this kind of adventure. It pulls you in, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like everyone has said, this is a huge part of my childhood. The minute that I was sat in that theater and that, the soundtrack starts to hit you and that music and the way it was shot, the way it was presented, I was just completely enthralled from the minute it started. And it just became a lifelong love of mine when it comes to films. I went out and bought the fedora hat after. I was just absolutely blown away by this film, and it still holds up today, which says it all, really.
When Terry just mentioned the matinees and the Republic serials and all that kind of thing, I suppose watching those serials, certainly when I was a kid, I don't know if you did too, that the hero is going to get out of all these scrapes. But I think some of the sensation and what keeps you with your hair sort of standing on end and glued to the screen on the edge of your seat is how on earth is he going to do it, Matt? Is that the inner child in all of us?
Yeah, I mean, there'd been a long drought for this sort of film. And I think the fact that there had been you're looking at probably about 40, 50 years where, it was a whole new, about three generations that had already passed before this sort of thing, came around again.
They did say that, didn't they?
And yeah, I mean, they grew up with these sort of things as well, but I think that they were more of a television thing back then too, like Flash Gordon and all that. They used to show them on TV in America. So I think when it came around again, and with the blistering success of Close Encounters and Star Wars, you knew that the guys had hit everything out of the park. You'd had Empire Strikes Back, you'd had all this in between, until this movie came out, there was so much anticipation. I'm guessing because back then I would have been about 6 years old when this movie was released.
You
and
child.
so 81, wasn't it? At 81?
81. Could you believe
Yeah.
it?
I mean, the first time I ever actually encountered this was on video. So, you know,
Me too.
and it was the face melting scene, the famous face. So I was like, no, I'm out. I'm out.
Let's
I'm
have a
not
show of
watching
hands
it anymore.
first. How many of us did see this in the cinema? I didn't. Oh, so it's just you and I then, Matt.
Yeah.
I've never
Children.
seen this
And
one.
that would have only been because my brother, I've got a lot of older siblings. So it would only, my brother was heavily into horror films and that. So those sort of things, you know, he would have gotten for me to watch, and I would have sneaked in. And unfortunately, I sneaked in at the wrong time. So for me, my first ever cinema going experience for Indiana Jones was Temple of Doom. So that's why it's got a certain part of my heart for that film, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, this one slips in seamlessly. So
I remember being disappointed because the week that it got released, we went to the cinema. It was packed, and we were so disappointed we couldn't get in. So we had to watch Clash of the Titans instead. Which we were, like, I watched it and I was like, oh, I watched it with a heavy heart because I couldn't get into Raiders.
Probably hate
I remember
that
all
film
my
now,
friends,
doesn't it?
all my friends
love
went
it.
home. All my friends went home after Clash of the Titans, and I said to them, "Look, I'm staying. I'm waiting for the next screen of Raiders." And they all went home, and I saw Raiders.
These are the kind of stories that we want, everybody, both from the panel and from everybody who's watching on YouTube and Facebook. So you're going to be having so much fun. You're going to forget later on. So please like the video now and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and hit the cloister bell so you get the notifications about what we're dropping next, whether it's a live stream, a podcast, or a video, whatever it is that we're doing. And with this show, we are specifically looking at not just the film itself, but the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a 1981 behind-the-scenes TV documentary that was released to coincide with the release of the actual film. And of course, it made its way, didn't it, to TV channels all over the world, which is probably where a lot of us first saw it, and where a lot of us probably saw our very first clips of Raiders of the Lost Ark. The documentary was later released on home video. We're going to come to all of that too. And it had a very recognizable narrator. We're going to get into all of that in a little while. But before we do, let's take a look over in the chat and see where the live audience are at. Are we stirring up memories for you already? Let's go and find out, everybody. Let's go and find out. Yeah, I think we've got a full house here of regulars. Good to see all the classic 80s fanboy with a hi, y'all, and Carol Jude there too. Howdy, y'all. So she's getting her cowboy on there to fit with the fedora. It's nice to see. See if we've got any memories. Evening all from Cynix. And a compliment about my hat. Thank you, Carol. About time somebody complimented me on this rather than focusing on him and him. And the one on the other end. Carol Jude said it was the last movie I saw with my dad.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's special.
Hell of a movie. Yeah, even more special. Evening all, says the Darren Zone. Every time I say the Darren Zone, I want to say it with an echo on my voice. I need a soundboard, don't I, everybody? I need a soundboard.
Is he hiding behind a wall there, Darren? Is he like... I think he's being mysterious, Wendy. Peeking out of the wall.
Yeah.
He lives in the house.
Carol Jude stirring up memories of other matinee and Republic serial sort of icons. I think Doc Savage was very much one of the heroes that Spielberg was looking to when he created this, or when I think George Lucas conceived of the character, didn't he? But it was very much a marriage of sort of two minds, from what I can gather.
Well, he was cigarette smoking, wasn't he? The original one.
Yeah,
he was like Marlboro Man.
Yeah, in the paintings it was.
Peter Harrington says, sure, Star Wars helped sell it, Matt, just as you did with Harrison Ford, but on its own merits, it's a damn good romp. Yeah, it's certainly the equal of Star Wars in creative respects, I think. Who else? I have seen a couple of the comics, and the artwork is fab, says Peter Harrington. Yeah, there's some great Indiana Jones comics. We'll come to those later on too. Yes, so much to talk about. Keep the memories coming, everybody, about when you first saw the film. And if you remember these... They used to put them on Bank Holiday Mondays, didn't they, Keith? You must. In fact, I know you remember. And whichever was the big movie that was out, particularly for kids in that holiday period, they would get these extended making of documentary shows, anywhere between 30, 40 or 60 minutes, depending on which channel they were on, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this, I'm so glad. Well, thank you for asking me on, for starters.
My pleasure.
But also, I'm so glad that you're kind of leading with this, because long before I actually saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, the actual film, there was the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there was also another documentary called Great Movie Stunts, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I had them both recorded on a VHS tape. And I would literally, in those days, I didn't know what a spoiler was, so it didn't bother me. And I would watch them religiously every day. And those making of featurettes were what made me want to become a filmmaker when I was a child. Basically, Star Wars was the film that sort of got me interested in movies themselves. But that making of Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first time I ever saw how a movie is made and what a director does, and how they figure it all out. And I was absolutely fascinated and hooked. And it was the thing that made me say, when I grow up, I want to be a filmmaker. Totally. So, and someday, hopefully, I will be. No.
So even though this wasn't the first of those programs, Keith, it's recognised, isn't it, as one of the key productions in, I suppose, what eventually would evolve into VAM on home media, onto DVD and Blu-ray and in box sets and things like that. There's that lineage there. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I literally wore the tape out because I watched it so much, and so I didn't see it for years. And then when the Indiana Jones collection finally came out on Blu-ray, a good friend of mine got me this as a gift, and I nearly cried because they have that actual documentary on here on this
edition
when it came out. So I was so pleased that I was able to revisit it, and I knew every word. It was like, because I'd watched it so much, and it, as I said, it made me cry when I saw it was on here, just because it was such a seminal moment for me as a child, definitely. So yeah.
No, that they value it as much as you did. Do you remember watching these programs as well, Terry? Because obviously you build props and you create costumes and all that kind of thing. You write scripts. Did this program affect you in a similar way to Keith? Shows
yeah, in a big way. Like I said, I saw it in the cinema, and then. Obviously, back in the day, you don't get a chance to put it on VHS for a good couple of years. So me and my friends went out with a Super 8 Cine camera. We filmed our own Indiana Jones little movie. I'm still trying to ask my mate to track down all these Super 8 films we made in the past, because one of them is my first sci-fi movie, and it's going to go on to me DVD of my first proper movie. Anyway, but we filmed an Indiana Jones thing with my mate, who was quite hunky. He's a big guy, and he put on a grey shirt and a fedora. And we just sort of running through. Everyone had our school uniform had grey shirts, so everyone was Nazis wearing these grey school uniform shirts, and it was all machine guns and whips and stuff. It was great, and all these Saturday afternoon making ofs that Keith was just talking about were on TV, and we were like, "Wow!" So he was literally hanging underneath that truck, and it. They were hanging from things and doing these fight sequences, and that's the most inspiring thing for a kid who wants to know how movies are made. You know what I mean? So it's just that, and with all the Star Wars stuff as well that came around, it was like, I want to make movies. So definitely, this is typical of the TV listings of the time, isn't it, Ian? You would see, they've got Space 1999 was there being run in the early 80s. This was with World of Sport directly afterwards, and then following up the ITN news was that making of Raiders of the Lost Ark special before we got to watch Bob Monkhouse do the old Family Fortunes there. So that was in TV time. So that's where I would have seen this. I would have almost certainly have watched this.
Yeah. No, I Raiders of the Lost Ark. For me, it was Close Encounters that wanted to become a director. But when I saw Close Encounters and I knew Raiders was coming out, and I found out through magazines, in those days with magazines, it wasn't the web or anything like that or internet. I found out Spielberg was going to direct Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was desperate to see it because I realized that directing was the thing. It was for me. directing and learning how to direct was what I was deeply interested in. And I remember I had to see Raiders Lost. That's why my friends, when they saw Clash of the Titans, that was enough for them. They left, and I was like, I've got to see this film. And watching that film, I did see stuff that I never saw in Close Encounters, direction wise, like his wonders and stuff like that he does in his movies. So I was learning through Spielberg. I'd like to meet him one day and shake his hand and say thanks for making me poor. but I think I would like to shake his hand as well and say thanks for giving us such great movies. But
look at the cap. Look at
exactly the same caps. But as far as I'm concerned, he is probably the best director, the best movie director in the world, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to learn off him just by watching his movies.
A great taste in headgear as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a quote here from Spielberg about Indiana Jones, and he says that Indiana Jones redefined the classic American hero as someone who did not have a backbone made of steel and skin, but somebody who could do themselves bodily harm. He was an intrepid archaeologist, he says here, and he could easily hurt himself, putting himself in these situations. But he always comes out on top, even if he has to swallow his pride without losing his nerve.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana Jones got hurt a lot, didn't he, in this film? Even got shot in the arm, didn't he, at one point? He was still going. Like a Duracell battery.
Dragged under cars. And
he can travel on a submarine too, underwater.
Well, there was a but they shot that clip he was holding onto the periscope, but they didn't put it in the film. Yeah. So that explains how he survived that.
I mean, the other thing for me with this was it as a child, it introduced me to a whole new genre as well, because before this came out, most of what I was watching was either contemporary stuff, like a Bond film or something, or sci-fi, in the wake of Star Wars and around Star Wars and whatever. And a sort of 1930s action adventure thing was kind of I hadn't seen a period piece like that at that point in my life. So this was really an introduction to that, in the same way that obviously Star Wars was an introduction to space opera sci-fi.
But did you notice, because the things when I went to see it the first time, the things I noticed was the sound effects, how different the sound effects was in this movie to every other action movie. From the punches to the shooting.
The punches, I was going to say. The punches. Yeah. I've never heard such unrealistic punches in my life.
Yeah, it was great.
It wasn't the standard Starsky and Hutch kind of...
Yeah.
It was more like a big slap, like you've hit someone with a wet fish. It was just this...
Do you think that those were deliberately sort of cartoonish almost, again, to harken back to those serials?
No, so basically Ben Burt... Every punch in this film, Ben Burt had created especially for the film. And it was his idea to have explosion sound effects for guns. And it was so unique, and so everybody recognized that fact that even 48 Hours, when you watch 48 Hours, that was the first film I saw that had the explosion shooting. If you watch 48 Hours, it definitely has that quality to the sound effects. Everybody realized that sound effects was just as important as dialogue. And that's where it came from, Star Wars and Raiders. And beyond that, it was, so there you go.
The concept of sound design, basically, which Ben Burt, obviously was the master at. So,
it all adds to that sort of complete assault on the senses, I think. The visuals, the sound, then there's the music as well. It's all by John Williams again, isn't it? So it's really sort of visceral and searing and rollicking, I think. But another string to this, I think, Wendy, you're a resident kind of horror fiend, I think, aren't you? I think this is a really interesting film because I think it does stray, particularly in the last quarter. It does slightly drift into that kind of horror feel, just enough for the family audience. That's it, for the family audiences. So what's your take on that?
I mean, I think that's probably another reason why this film really grabbed me, because it's got everything. It's got a sort of love story. It's got adventure. It's got a classical hero that you can just, that just encapsulates everything that you would want a hero to be. And then at the you've got the horror elements. There's scenes where the way it is filmed, it really does feel it kind of makes your hair stand on end a little bit, like where they're opening the Ark of the Covenant, and you just don't know what's going to come out. Just all little elements like that. I think it just captures so many levels of creativity and
snakes.
appeal. And snakes. Why did it
I
have
hate
to be
snakes.
snakes?
Yeah. The snake stuff. There was a scene in this. I mean, I watched this entire documentary, and I watched it all in one sitting, even though it's on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description of the video and the show notes to the podcast for this, because it's all up on YouTube. It's quite low quality, but as Keith says, it's on the Blu-ray set, so it's in perfect condition there. Yeah, I watched it on YouTube, and I was riveted by this, and I think it's such a well-made documentary. I think they show you just enough of each item rather than going completely forensic the way that some DVD special features eventually did go, where they'd spend a half an hour feature showing you how they made one scene or something like that. This sort of skips through the film, and it focuses on the exact set pieces that you want it to. When you look back on the film, you think, I wonder how they did that with the snakes, Terry. And then you watch this, and it shows you, doesn't it? It shows that they hadn't got anywhere near enough at first, did they?
Yeah. He said like 2,000 snakes wasn't enough. For me, one snake, it would be enough. They did put some rubber snakes amongst the real ones, but it shows that it's a completely different way of thinking back then. I was watching in that documentary, they were doing some cityscapes of Cairo, which was Kairouan in Tunisia, and they had to ask hundreds of houses to take their aerials down, the TV aerials, because they weren't visible. Nowadays, just digitally paint them out. In fact, they probably wouldn't. The entire cityscape would be done with a digital painting nowadays, rather than.
Do you know what made me laugh in the documentary? Is Spielberg says, when they were dealing with the snake, Spielberg says to one of the guys, so that's poison. And it goes, right, I just want one person to focus on the poisons of snakes. I'm like, poisonous snakes? What are you talking about? You've got them
health
on
and
set.
safety nightmare.
What?
It's like, how many minutes do you need to get to the anti-venom? How many minutes?
I'm like, what?
We've got 2 minutes, haven't you?
Yeah.
Safety. Oh my God.
Spielberg's like, I want one person looking after the snakes, and everybody's like walking away. You know what I mean? He's gonna look after those poisonous snakes.
Hey, I tell you what, I've just looked up Raiders of the Lost Ark on Rotten Tomatoes, right?
Yeah.
Without you guys doing it, anyone want to guess the audience score in percent?
Very, very high. I'd say. You know what? I'd say it probably is. I think it probably is 100. If not, then 99.
Well, it's had 250,000 ratings, and it's scored 96% to this day, and the tomato-ometer is 95%. So that tells you all you need to know, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. With a confirmation.
It's funny though, because Spielberg directed it really fast. He directed like a TV show. So there's loads of mistakes in Raiders. When you look very closely, hundreds and hundreds of mistakes in there, even with somebody wearing jeans at one point, if you look closely. But I'm surprised because they went to every studio, and every studio turned them down, and only Paramount said, okay, we'll give you the money. Imagine that. He's just made Star Wars the biggest hit of history, and every studio turns him down. How odd is that?
Listen to that and think, wow, you still had trouble getting the money for this. I noticed that Lucas said that he was completely confident in Spielberg. Spielberg had a couple of huge hits at this point, but it's almost as if, I had confidence in this guy. And he focused not on Jaws and Close Encounters, Matt, but he focused on the fact that Spielberg had worked on television. And I suppose that kind of momentum that Ian was just talking about.
All these movies that Spielberg's done are completely rewatchable. Like, you could watch one now, you could watch this movie right now, and then you could watch it again in a couple of hours' time after it's finished. It's one of those rewatchable movies that it's, and yet I think it's funny how Spielberg still had to prove himself. Even though there's not that many movies that actually have two directors, very well-known directors, actually working together on one particular film and not think that it's going to make money, you know? And I'm really surprised by that.
So
Really
am I.
surprised.
I'm totally surprised that they wouldn't give them the money to make this film. You know, I mean, what kind of, just goes to show Hollywood's, the people who work in Hollywood, they're idiots, aren't they? Let's face
Well, they'll
it.
spend, the thing is though, they'll spend money, they'll throw money at everything now. It's stuff that you can read a synopsis to a movie nowadays and you will go, that is a terrible, terrible idea for a film. Terrible.
Yeah.
And yet they will spend millions and millions of dollars on these things, you know. But back then you would have read the synopsis on it. Oh, I want to see that, you know.
It's interesting as well because Spielberg never directed the scene with him under the truck, which is like a classic scene. He wasn't there at the time. It was a second unit that directed all that scene. So that scene, I find that interesting. It's like Hitchcock not directing the shower scene.
The shower
do you know
scene,
what I mean?
yeah.
Because that's so famous. And I find that very fascinating personally. But there you go.
That image of those two men there, and when you think about the number of careers that they have launched and the number of dreams that they have, you know, lit a match to, you know, it's just incredible. It
certainly
almost
is. Love the shirts.
boggles the mind. Yeah. Yeah.
He's just like J&T there, Spielberg, isn't he, in that one? But when I was watching this documentary, what struck me was not only seeing these two guys working with mutual respect and with good humor as well. They're spending a lot of money on this movie, and I wouldn't say it didn't look like they were breaking a sweat, but they seem very confident in what they're doing, in what they're trying to achieve. And yet both of them were still in their early to mid 30s, Ian, something like that.
Yeah, it was 20. Was it 20 million they spent on this? And no one wanted to give. That's not a lot of money when you think about it. I think it was 20 million. Maybe I'm
the
wrong.
budget there says $20 million, made 389.9.
Wow. So $20 million. I mean, that was, and nobody wanted to give him that. It's crazy, isn't it? It's it just baffles the mind.
The pitch may have sounded like a folly, like somebody's like a boyhood dream that they wanted to film.
1937 Nazis, what?
Because George Lucas said that he wanted to make a film because he wanted to see it.
Yeah,
you know, it was just a personal thing of his. So maybe he said that in the studio meetings, and I went, "What?" So I don't know. That's why they turned them down, I guess. I don't know.
Spielberg said that he wanted to make the James Bond film.
He did, yeah.
And this is how this has all come about. You know, the fact that he wanted to do this, and he's like, "I really want to do it, but I don't even think they'd let me do it." And then, like, of course, George Lucas is there sitting there with Star Wars just being debuted, and he's like. And he gets off the phone and they're like, "Oh, it's a massive hit," and he's like, "Yeah, I've got this other idea."
I mean, Cubby Broccoli had actually turned Spielberg down.
He did, yeah. He did.
This is why in Jaws, when they take the garbage from the shark, the license plate actually has 007 on it. And Spielberg put that in there because he'd been rejected on that. And he was telling George that, and George said, "Oh, I've got something
better." Yeah, and he
did. Indiana Smith.
Yes, it was originally. But then I think Spielberg came up with Jones, didn't he? And they went, "Okay, we'll call him that." But what's interesting about it is that so Tom Selleck was the man that they wanted to go to play Indiana Jones. And obviously he didn't. Yeah, so he was
the mustache.
Yeah, and he basically.
This is what I call. This is what I call a Big Mo moment.
Yeah.
If anyone knows what a Big Mo moment is, it's one of those things that everybody thinks that they're the first person to tell you, but everybody knows it. Yeah, Tom Selleck was the original choice. They were desperate to get him for this role, weren't they? They wanted him because he was unknown.
Well, but a season, him from doing it. So,
but season 8, episode 10 is when they took the mickey out of Indiana Jones, and they called it Legend. Was it Legend of the Lost Art? That was what the episode was called, and that's why he's wearing the hat and the leather jacket. And I saw the episode. It is very funny. It is very, very, very funny.
Did they approach him for the role and then just change their minds? So they
they cast him. They cast him as Indiana Jones.
It was
and what happened then? Why didn't he?
It was his contract for Magnum PI. He was contracted to do. Magnum PI was already a big hit by that point.
No.
Contracted negotiated for
No, I
5
think
seasons.
No, you're
he'd
wrong,
been-
Keith. You're wrong.
It was the pilot deal, wasn't it, Ian?
Yes. So basically, he was going to make Magnum PI, and they cancelled it. And then when they're gonna they say you got the part, and when he was gonna actually sign, they picked up the option for Magnum, and so he couldn't do it. So he had to do Magnum. So yeah, I
Wow.
think that's the case. I'm probably wrong. Keith's
Well,
probably right.
I'll give you a quick reading from Wikipedia here. It says Lucas wanted a relatively unknown actor willing to commit to a trilogy of films to play Indiana Jones. Those considered for the role included, here we go, Bill Murray, Nick Nolte, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, Tim Matheson, Nick Mancuso, Peter Coyote, no idea who that is, Jack Nicholson, Jeff Bridges, John Shea, Sam Elliott, and Harry Hamlin. Clash of the Titans again. Casting director Mike Fenton favored Jeff Bridges, but Lucas's wife and frequent collaborator Marcia Lucas preferred Tom Selleck. Selleck was contractually obligated to filming the television series Magnum PI if it were to be made into a full series.
Yeah.
Lucas and Spielberg asked the show studio CBS to release him 10 days early from his contract. Realizing Selleck was in demand, CBS greenlit Magnum PI, forcing him to drop out and leaving the production with no lead actor only weeks before filming.
And who else did that happen to?
Politics.
Pierce Brosnan. But that happened to Pierce Brosnan as well.
Yeah, with Remington Steele. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
It could have easily gone in a completely different direction. Can anybody imagine what Raiders of the Lost Ark would have been like with Tom Selleck in it?
You don't have to.
You don't have
Watch
to because I've
episode
got it
10.
here.
Yeah.
Check this
I
out.
mean, he was great. I think he would have been great. But I mean, I love this scene.
Yeah,
Very good.
Tom-
Very good.
Tom Selleck's obviously had a very long career of his own. He did very well out of Magnum. Of course, he's in
Very good.
Friends, 3 Men and a Baby, multiple movies too. So I doubt it keeps him awake at night. But he would have been a strong choice for Indiana Jones, I think.
Sure.
Not just in the way that he looks, but his way. I think it would have ended up being a different version of the same film.
Sure.
Tom Selleck is more. He's a warmer presence, I think, isn't he? Whereas Harrison Ford is.
Well,
he's
he
a
did
prickly
get
man
to
in
wear a
real life.
hat in Quigley Down Under, so
He
he's
did.
fine.
He did.
Oh, God, yeah.
But then he appeared in High Road to China.
China.
So
Yeah.
which was a big rip off of Indiana Jones. But he was. I actually liked High Road to China. I thought it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, they're decent films, but they continued to cast him, didn't they? In sort of also ran Indiana Jones type characters, and he didn't seem to mind that. Presumably, it was a decent payday.
He was
Tom
hoping,
was.
maybe,
Yeah.
he wanted to get out of that Magnum role, didn't he? So, I think he probably, I think to a degree, he was like sorting that movie career,
He tried. I mean, he's been into a few movies, but the thing is, though, he's obviously grateful for Magnum because that's what he's known for, and that's what he's known throughout the world. And it's better to have a success than none at all, really. Let's face it. So, Magnum's a huge success. I
Magnum
remember
was
watching
huge.
Magnum. Yeah, I remember watching Magnum.
Oh,
And
yeah,
for Harrison
mum
Ford-
absolutely just
Well, for Harrison
Loved
Ford,
them.
obviously, he was Han Solo. He was already a very recognizable actor, and he would have probably have lived quite comfortably off Star Wars, even if that and Empire were the only 2 films he'd have made for the rest of his career, I suppose.
I think
But off
the
the
difference
back of playing. Well, off the back of playing Indiana Jones, though, Ian, I mean, this secured him further roles. I mean, this directly led to him being cast in Blade Runner. But more importantly, I think the fact that he not only made this movie and brought this character to life enough for him to return just for 2 sequels in this decade alone, but to sort of really cement the character as a movie icon. But it also enabled him to play all kinds of other movie roles in and around his appearances as Indiana Jones, didn't it? So he did other adventure movies. He did comedy movies like Working Girl. He did some very hard drama and harder thrillers.
Coast, yeah,
and even a couple of kids' films and things like that. So it made him a real movie star, Wendy, rather than just a one-trick pony that I suppose he could have ended up being saddled with just being Han Solo.
I just want to say, I think the difference between Harrison Ford and, say, Tom Selleck, it's like Roger Moore and Sean Connery. Harrison Ford has that hard edge about him, but yet he has that vulnerability about him. So to me, obviously, I can't imagine anyone playing Indiana Jones other than Harrison Ford. But if Tom Selleck would have taken the part, I believe it would have been more lighter. Like the Roger Moore James Bond, because he has that light touch, doesn't he, old Tom Selleck? Sorry, Wendy, carry on. I just thought I'd say that.
That's really well observed, Ian. Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely might have had a slightly different feel to the character. I love the way Harrison plays Indy, because he just doesn't care. He just comes in, and he does not give to you know what. He just comes in, and you just get this impression that, and I think that's what makes it so believable. I think that's how come it comes through so well with the character, because watching the behind the scenes special earlier on YouTube, you could just see the way Harrison held himself behind the scenes. He was just very chill. He didn't appear to come at everything with a big ego. Speaking of chill, and John Rhys Davies, he just showed up, and he was just himself pretty much. From what you can see, you don't see a lot of acting really necessary, because Indy's, the way he played Indy was just like, that's why I think he was so believable, because he just showed up every day, and he was Indy.
It was.
I like the fact that he's a very ordinary man, an intelligent man, a learned man, a man with a career and a wealth of knowledge. But I think the things I like about him the most is that he's so
manly.
No, it's not. It's not even that. It's the responsibility that he takes, not just for people in his care, but I think even if the rest of the world either thinks that Indy is completely mad, that he's chasing around after some deity that just looks like a rock or a tiny little bit of golden tat or whatever, the fact that he believes that this could bring about the end of the world, he doesn't care that other people may think he's insane, and he doesn't even care that the only other people who do believe this could be like the Nazis or whoever else. He just does what he has to do in the there and then to try and make things right, and it all falls on his shoulders.
This was the movie where he wasn't after fortune and glory.
No, he wasn't.
And you find when I watched Temple of Doom first, and then I went back to watch this one, I was like, well, why isn't he trying to become? Why isn't he trying for this whole fortune and glory thing? And I found that really odd. It took me years to find out that film was a prequel film. I had no idea. Someone just turned it out and said, "Oh, it's a prequel," and I'm like,
but also Spielberg wanted to take Indiana Jones' character in a different. He wanted him to be darker. So he had decided that Indiana Jones was always drinking, was a drunken at one point, and George Lucas obviously rejected all that. So Spielberg wanted Indiana Jones to be slightly darker as a character. But that all got thrown out at one point, and because Lucas was saying we want to concentrate on his academic thing. That's what makes him, he's all about finding stuff and being an archaeologist. That was
very, very canny, because if they'd have gone with that sort of slightly more embittered, nihilistic, I think kids would not have wanted to grow up to be Indiana Jones in quite the same way.
Yes. Yes. I should have written I love you on my eyelids for this one.
Little attentions to detail, yeah. When I was watching this making of, Keith, what I really enjoyed, obviously now we're in 2022 and it's kind of a standing joke that Harrison Ford is one of the grumpy old men of Hollywood.
Oh, God.
And it's very easy, isn't it, for us to subscribe to the idea that as we get older, we have a sort of license to be a little bit crusty, to be a little bit grumpy. But what I enjoyed about watching this video is that you could see in those little moments behind the scenes that were with Harrison Ford, there's a scene where Spielberg, who's this sort of young, idealistic director, who's really enthusiastic about what he's got there in storyboard form. He knows he can make that happen. He can bring that to life. And he's taking Harrison Ford through these storyboards. Yeah. And they're sat there. I don't know what they're sat on. It looks like some sort of box. Yeah. And as he turns to him, Harrison Ford's sort of eating his lunch. And he's explaining the scene, and Harrison Ford says, "I'm just going to go off and get some mustard for this."
Yes.
You know,
That's what I love about him. He's
Telling
just-
you, hey, Harris,
Yeah.
the best part. He left at the best part.
I know.
yeah, and Spielberg's gutted, isn't it? Because Harrison, he just wants to know what's being asked of him, so he could go on and do it and play his part. It's not that he doesn't care about it; it's just that he relates to the material and to the
Actor.
task at hand
He's
in
an
a
actor.
different
Very
way,
no
doesn't he? Ian?
nonsense. He just gets on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an actor, and he act mostly. In my experience, actors, they look up their lines, and they very rarely look at the description that's connected to the lines. I have to keep reminding them. Well, the actors I've worked with, look, you got to read the description because that tells you how to say the lines. You know what I mean? And you got to read you got to ingest the whole story because that tells you the tone. Do you know what I mean? But nine times out of 10, actors are just concerned about being good on screen, making it believable, and learning their lines. And sometimes as a director, you have to kind of pull them back and go, you know what? It's bigger than that. You have to look at this. You have to look at that. And, you know what it's like, Keith, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing as well with Harrison Ford was the fact that, that was kind of Spielberg's call because Lucas wasn't actually convinced about that. And he was also a little bit worried that because Harrison had been in Star Wars, he said he didn't want Harrison Ford to be like the Robert De Niro to his Scorsese, kind of thing. But Spielberg was the one who actually said, no, he's the right guy. And, Lucas was like, well, you're directing it. So, and like you said, you can't imagine anyone else now in that role, right? So
they removed the snake's reflection,
Yeah.
didn't they, in the latest version of the film? But I always laugh at the bit where Marion's on top of Indy and the snake jumps and it obviously hits the glass, doesn't it? It just goes boom on the glass. And
so you're saying that there was glass screens in between when they
glass
get
screen
really
there to
close
separate
to them?
Yeah. And it obviously hits the glass, but we all accept. We all accept it, don't we?
For years, like obviously on VHS and whatever, it didn't really matter. But when they sort of moved to high def, you could you could totally see the reflection of the cobra in the glass. So they digitally removed that. So
you could say that with these making of films, there, Terry, that you'll appreciate this. You're a voiceover man. That a lot of the time the narration is what makes these things. And if you haven't got the right sort of deep-throated, gravelly narrator to take you through these sort of, how can I put this? These choppy bits of film that whoever's sort of following around the film unit, they were probably filming what they could, wouldn't they? And so I suppose that the trick to making it all flow is knowing what to put after what and to get a good narrator. And this is narrated by a man called Scott Beach. Had you heard this guy's voice before?
I'm sure I have, but the name doesn't ring a bell. I watched the making of literally about 2 hours ago, and it didn't jump out to me, but it does have that nice voiceover thing. I'm literally in the middle of editing the making of documentary for my first film, and I wrote all the narration to tie all the pieces together, and everyone was like, well, you're a voiceover artist, you just do it. And I was like, well, I don't want to be like, oh, how I wrote it, I directed it, and now here's my voiceover. So I literally did put a call out onto some of the voice acting groups on Facebook, and I found a guy called Robert Reddy from the States, and he has that kind of voice. He's like, for shooting in South Wales, the weather was really good for that 1 week.
See, you could have done it.
Wrong. It was like that.
You could have done it.
You just put your own guy out of work.
My co-producers and stuff were kind of like, oh, I don't know about having an American voiceover. And I was like, well, it's going to an American distributor, but what do you think? And I played them a bit of it, and they went, oh, that reminds me of the Saturday morning making of Star Wars and Star Trek and everything. It's like, they filmed it in a place called Park Penalta in Wales. It was like,
are you paying this guy?
Really,
Terry?
Fantastic.
Are you paying him, Terry?
He got paid decent money.
See, you could have just changed your voice and saved yourself some pennies.
I could have done that. Yeah.
Well, just in case you recognise the name and recognise the voice when you do catch this, Scott Beach was an actor. He was in American Graffiti, the George Lucas movie, and he was also a voice artist in THX 1138. So he was in that too. He played the mayor in Stand By Me, the 1980s
Okay.
classic. He was in
I
The
love
Right Stuff.
THX. I'm wondering what he played in THX now. I need to check that out.
He was a voice
robot.
of some description. he was in Mrs. Doubtfire, sorry, where he played a lawyer. And so you would recognise him here and there in bits and pieces. He sadly died in 1996, but I certainly recognised his voice from various shows like that.
It was either him or William Conrad. They always used to use William Conrad to do.
William Conrad.
William Conrad, Cannon.
Yeah.
Cannon.
Right.
I think it's time we
Buck
go and take
Rogers
another
intro.
look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whoever that was. I think we've got to go and check out and see what people are saying in the live chat, see which memories we are stirring up and excavating for ourselves. Oh, well, first things first, we have an answer here to the question from the Darren Zone, who says that the picture was taken by Wendy in Cardiff's Burger King. So that's...
Yes. We were sitting in they had these great big Dr. Evil chairs.
Wow.
They were just huge.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
Remember them? Yeah. So, we nipped in there for a quick bite, and I thought, oh, this is a picture. So there we go. The rest is history.
He adds that bank holidays and Christmas were the time for films like this on TV. Carol Jude says, Harrison Ford was my David Tennant for quite a few years, Star Wars and Indy. I was just a little older than a kid. She was your David Tennant. Very different physical specimens there, Carol. But we'll go with it. Kev Hoofanman says, what does he say? He says, hello. All hope all's well and had a great May Day bank holiday. So I thought I'd pop in and watch along. We'll pop in anytime. More than welcome. The Classic 80s fanboy says, I think it's a damn shame that stories have become a thing of the past. I used to enjoy storyboards. I used to enjoy George putting up the storyboards and talking about how the stunts were going to be done. The storyboards are still very much a thing, but I think there's different kinds of storyboards, aren't there, Matt? They use animatics and all kinds of other methods too, don't
animatics now. Yeah, it's all mostly done by animatics now.
Well, the big movies use animatics, don't they?
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah. Well, they've got to... I mean, I think it's a cost factor too. They really don't have the time to, do certain... try certain things, and that sort of thing. So they need to have it all written out in front of them, And there's quite a few directors now that actually do animatics themselves.
Yeah.
And don't
comment
actually
here again
employ
from
other
Derek
people.
McManus, who also says Raiders of the Lost Ark was my late father's favourite movie. So obviously means something to Derek there too, something sentimental.
Also reminds me of Christmas as well, Raiders, because they used to show it like 5 Christmases in a row, I think. Was it ITV? Can't remember.
Yeah,
ITV got this one, the BBC
and
got the
BBC.
second.
I've got a terrible story about Christmas and Raiders.
It looks sad. With
Do you
that
want
look
to
in
tell
your
it?
face.
Or do you need therapy if you go through it again? Have a think about it while I read Peter Harrington's comment.
Okay.
He says, I remember coming out of the cinema and I felt like a kid again after seeing Raiders. I was 18 years old.
So I remember going to see Crystal Skull with Keith. Remember that, Keith?
We might talk about Crystal Skull another time.
No, yeah, I know. But
I
just
like
thought I'd mention
Crystal
that to
Skull.
Keith.
So do I. They actually stole the submarine from Das Boot to film those scenes.
Wow.
Repurposed there. Kev Hoofanman said, I took my mom to see Raiders and she loved it at the flicks. I think it has got that kind of broad appeal, though, hasn't it, Keith?
Mm-hmm.
Action.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's got that universal appeal. And there you go, the Wellheim Scream. So
in there.
I actually use that for my channel.
Yeah, you do.
Homage. So yeah.
Classic 80s fanboy. That's Carl. He says, I was going to ask if Ben Burt did the sound effects.
He did indeed.
Oh yeah,
absolutely did. Yeah, preempted that one there.
Indeed.
Carol Jude
it was mostly a Lucasfilm production, wasn't it?
Yes. Well,
It
it
had
was.
a lot to do with Lucasfilm. So
Yeah, and so was the making of too. At the beginning, Carol Jude said the body with the spiders. When some of the guys in the group run away, I remember being scared by that. I was terrified by that when I was a child, actually.
And poor old Alfred Molina, he had to endure it, didn't he? Because they weren't moving on his body, so they put a Black Widow. Is it a Black Widow spider on him, so the other spiders can go towards it? That's why. Yeah, he was terrified apparently. So there you go. Imagine that, eh? First day you come on set, right? I'm going to put some spiders on you. You what?
Yeah.
Do you know
No
what I mean?
acting required.
Yeah.
They blacked his face up a bit too, or was he extremely tanned by
He
then?
was tanned. He was tanned.
Yeah,
But that was
right.
his first acting gig in
Yes.
Hollywood. That was his first acting gig, which is quite impressive when you think about it. From a sidekick to indie straight to Dr. Octopus. You can't get
Yeah, it only took
you can't
20
get any
years.
better than
Yeah,
that.
20
can you?
years on, he's still
Yeah.
very much in demand too.
Yeah.
Carol Jude said Selleck would have done just fine, and we were talking about Tom Selleck being the original choice there, weren't we? But I'm glad for Harrison Ford in his prime. He was very much in his prime when he was playing Indiana Jones, wasn't he? Because obviously he stopped playing Han Solo for all intents in 1983. He would have been filming that in 82, so just a year after this was made. So a long time ago.
Yeah.
He also had a bit part in American Graffiti. Who are we talking about? Harrison Ford
Harrison
or
Ford.
Scott Beach?
Harrison Ford. No,
So
Harrison Ford.
they were both in it. Yeah.
Harrison Ford was in Kung Fu, an episode of Kung Fu. I remember that.
Really?
Yeah, he was an episode of played the sheriff. He was on screen for like less than a minute.
Ah,
Yeah, so there you go. He went into the jail, and Kane was in jail, and he said, "Open the jail, release him." And
it's not the
that's what he
minutes,
said.
honey. It's the pay packet.
Exactly.
Because he was working as a carpenter, wasn't he, at the time,
was
in and
indeed.
around the area of movie
Hollywood.
studios and things like that. I did see a documentary about Harrison Ford quite recently. There were some pictures of him in his days then. When
Yeah,
he was,
George
when
would
he was
just pull him in to do readings, wouldn't he? And
Yeah.
auditions and stuff. He's like, "Oh, can you read these lines for Han Solo? Because we've got Sissy Spacek coming in for Princess Leia and all these other people. Who's that guy from Greatest American Hero?
Oh, him, yeah.
You know who would have made a great Princess Leia? Karen Allen as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love
She would have
Karen.
been
We'll
good for
talk
that.
about Karen in a little while. Yeah, from the archive. It's good to see you from the archive. I know who that is. I'm glad that Indy's character captured the academic approach. I think that's one thing that does make him unique, doesn't it?
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree here.
Why?
Go on.
Because this comes from this is like obviously your first impressions, childhood memories. It's like when I saw Harrison Ford in the classroom, with his 3-piece suit and his glasses, I was like, it looks wrong. He doesn't look, he looks like he'd better off beating someone up than teaching kids. But if Tom Selleck had played the role, I think he could have. Tom Selleck feels, especially with that big mustache, he feels like he would have fitted into that era a bit better.
Because he's lighter.
John Wayne is something too hunky about him. He's too manly to be in a suit and sort of. I'm a bit of a nerd,
And another thing I noticed though about watching this making of, yeah, me too. I think the duality of that actually really, really works. And because we're used to seeing Harrison Ford as Han Solo as literally the sort of space cowboy type, I think it works even more. It's sort of it does feel it has you off your.
It does feel like a secret identity. Because it's his Clark Kent, isn't it? And then when he gets he finally gets to get the tweed suit off, and he's just got the the desert outfit and the hat, you're like, oh, he's the superhero now.
Also gets you to look twice at your own teachers. I think, Wendy, you think, what were they doing at the weekend?
But you know what? This is a true story. This is a true story, right? And I swear I'm not lying to you. I used to have a teacher and used to teach geography, and his name was Mr. Bond. Right?
Yes.
And in the summer, I'm serious, right? This is no lie. In the summer, after the summer, we used to have him for geography, and he used to put stuff on the table, stuff that he collected around the world. So he was like Indiana Jones. In the summer, he used to go to different countries and pick up stuff and bring it back to show us. And he was quite a handsome chap. All the girls used to fancy him as well in the school. And his name was Mr. Bond. That's no lie.
I went to Catholic school and they were run by nuns, so I don't think they did much else.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
Another thing I noticed about watching this making of movie too was obviously it's not films like this. Pieces like this aren't shot cinematically, are they? Would they have used Steadicams to shoot the making of film?
No.
What would they have used? Just standard television cameras?
Yeah, it'll be on sticks or handheld.
Yeah.
It was 16 mil is usually the standard for making.
Because obviously we're at these people and movie icons, really, the people in front of and behind the camera. We're very much at their shoulders while they're making these big decisions. Whilst Spielberg is sort of planning out shots and action scenes, all those character moments, we're right there with them. For example, there's a scene where he's just sat there with Karen Allen talking her through the drinking competition scene. and they're just two very normal people. You can see Spielberg's not inexperience because he's already done quite a lot by then, but you can certainly see his youth there in those moments. And it's the same with Harrison Ford too. I was struck by when I was looking at that footage, how wiry Harrison Ford was, whereas he looks quite hunky in the film, because I suppose because the way it's shot.
I don't know. I still think he I wouldn't mess with Harrison Ford.
No,
he looks like
lean
a big
and
crap
wiry.
out of you, huh?
It does say that he bulked up specifically for Indiana Jones, so he did hit the gym a bit.
Yeah, and he was not well though when he was over there, wasn't he? He had,
the dysentery, yeah.
Yeah, dysentery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, majority of the crew had was unwell because of the food that they were serving over there. Spielberg was clever because he brought all his canned food from England, so all he was eating was from cans, so he didn't get sick.
I've got more horror stories to tell you about Tunisia.
It was because he was ill that you get the classic scene where
he
shoots the
swordsman.
swordsman. Because
he's just like, what?
It's fantastic.
A full-on action sequence, which you can see bits of in the making of, actually.
But nobody talks about Rhys. What's his name? Rhys Davis. When he soiled his pants. He soiled his pants when he was doing one scene where he was trying to serve the food to the Germans, which got cut out of the movie. He literally soiled his pants because he was so sick. So nobody talks about that, though. Nobody talks about that.
I was just about to read this comment.
Cut that noise out.
We'll talk about that.
I was just about to read this comment from Carol Jude. She's not talking about that story. She's talking about an earlier story. She says, Ian, that is such a cool story, Ian. I think secretly cool teachers really dug Indy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was before Indy, this teacher, well before Indiana Jones was even conceived. This guy, I swear, I'm not even lying, Mr. Bond. His name was, the first thing he said to us was, "My name is Bond, and if you mess with me, I've got a license to kill." That's the first thing he said to us. Do you know what I mean? So, we were scared of him, but as we got older, you realize he was such a nice guy, so. But anyway, sorry.
On that note, talking about nice guys, please keep the comments coming if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook. We're enjoying this conversation and, plundering and groveling our way through the darkened tunnels of Raiders of the Lost Ark and how it was made with some lifelong fans here. Let us know some more in the comments section, what you think about it all. And we're going to take a quick break for a couple of minutes. Time for you to check out these classic adverts. And we'll be back here for more talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark with this lot soon. So check this lot out and see if any of these stir some more memories.
Charles is in the living room looking for my chocolate orange, but it's quite safe.
Famous chocolate orange. Smooth milk or plain chocolate with real oil of orange. How safe is yours?
I've had enough of this jungle.
It's Indiana Jones, a large-size action figure.
Big boulders coming in fast.
He's new from Kenner's Raiders of the Lost Ark collection.
Stay low, Indiana. They're right behind you. Use your whip. Whoa, I'm slipping. Oh! A six-pit. Get me out of here.
Indiana Jones, a large-size action figure from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, new from Kenner.
Can Indiana Jones escape from the forces of evil? Can he survive 13 fiendish situations? Will Indy make it all the way? Find out in Atari's Raiders of the Lost Ark adventure game. It's diabolically difficult. It's mysterious. It's never the same twice. And it's only from Atari.
Indy, over here. Indiana Jones, at your service, Toad. Ah!
Indiana Jones and other action figures, new from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, each sold separately.
Watch him, Cairo, swordsman. Yeah, watch my swing. Yikes! Ugh. All downhill from here, swordsman. You'll be sorry, Jones. Tricked you again, Toad.
Indiana Jones, Toad, and Cairo Swordsman action figures, each sold separately from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, new from Kenner.
Cairo
Oh, those are
Swordsman.
great.
Come here, Cairo Swordsman. We haven't given you a name.
I would have liked
Cairo
that.
Bill.
I would have liked that indie action figure though.
The big one.
Yeah,
I'd given her one. 12 inch.
I wish that. It's like, oh my god, I wish I'd had one of those.
They didn't sell very well though. Those toys, Ken.
Didn't they?
I never ever saw them in the shelves ever.
I love
I
the
would've got
first
'em.
line in the advert where the kid goes with the dog. I've had enough of this jungle. Mosquitoes everywhere.
Well, speaking of the jungle and of you, Terry, you've been on a few adventures in the past, haven't you?
Oh,
You've
yeah.
been to a few locations, some that you can even speak about. But you've been to a few movie locations over the years, haven't you? And I understand you've been to some of the locations for Raiders. So we've got a few pictures of yours here. You want to tell us something about these?
Okay, well, these are taken from 2010. All of it's all in Tunisia. We went all over the country looking at mainly the Star Wars locations, but we stopped off at a few indie locations. So that is the middle of Kairouan, which is a sprawling market and town, etc. It's a walled city. That tower you can see in the background is the main mosque, and there's a huge wall all the way around the entire city. But that double for Cairo, and the view you've got there, if you on the very right of the picture, the blue awning, it's cut off there, but you'll see it in another photo. That's the corner where Indy's up eating the dates up at the top.
Okay.
Cafe with the poison dates, etc. You'll see it in the next page.
Dates.
Oh, that's me recreating the pose next to we managed to find the exact door where the Nazi spy with that hat on was waiting for Karen Allen to come around the corner, etc. And I managed to find the door because it had if you look underneath the keyhole just a bit further down, there's two blanking plates where original keys were. So we found that, and I popped up a picture of the actual Nazi spy as well.
When you're tracking down these locations, do you use a guidebook of any kind? You know, you've already been tipped off by other people.
Well, no. Obviously, there was about 12 of us went out there, and there were a lot of guys. I mean, there's the Nazi spy there. The door's been repainted about 20 times. No, a lot of guys there who are obviously bigger Jones fans than me. One of them brought the fedora, and they had countless clips and screenshots, etc., etc. Now that hunky specimen there, my friend Zach from the States, he's a male model, so that explains his biceps. But what he's carrying there is on one of the days where I had the next best thing to dysentery, I decided to stay in the hotel because I couldn't risk getting into a Jeep for a few hours.
There's a running theme here.
Oh yeah,
it's the food.
But they went out to the Cairo dig, the Well of Souls dig in Tunisia, and to this day, big chunks of plaster like Zach is holding up there, with hieroglyphics on, are still buried in the sand.
Oh, I see.
That was the one piece he managed to unearth and wrap up in plastic bags and post back to the States. But there were other pieces that were so big and so fragile that they were just falling to pieces.
I wonder
So
what
they just
became
left
of
them
that, if it's on his hearth somewhere.
Oh, some local is clearly selling them to tourists.
Is this the area where Indiana Jones is running to try and
Yeah,
get married?
he's running after Karen Allen, who's in the baskets, etc. So that we took quite a few shots of that. You'll notice all the doors are blue. It's a religious thing.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It keeps the evil spirits out, apparently. There's my friend Colin, who decided to dress like he's from Yorkshire. He decided to dress like Indy for the day, and he was pointing to a number of the different alleyways and screenshots. I think some of these were actually posed exactly. More of you could see the wall of the actual city there, and I'm not sure without looking at a reference picture, but there's the shot where the truck goes underneath the archway. That might even be it, but where they put a fake archway and then they just dropped a shop front in front of it really quickly to confound the Nazis, you know.
Yeah.
What else have we
Very
got?
clever stuff.
Yeah, that's I don't even know if I'm in that photo. It's quite small, but again,
That's another thing I noticed about the making of show, though. It was how they would create back at Elstree, because obviously most of those big sets were at Elstree, and they do show you the set from the finale, don't they? Actually being put together, it's like 30 feet high or whatever.
Yeah.
But they explain the difference between shooting on a soundstage and on location here, and how they would create partial sets to drop on the top of walls to give it that sense of the real location as it was supposed to be, specific to that time and the architecture. It was fascinating stuff.
Yeah, the only photos I didn't manage to dig up in time. Oh, that's from quite a while ago. I think that might have been how it looks now, because that was the balcony where Indy was having the poison date, etc. That's that blue awning I was talking about earlier.
And the TV aerials are back there.
Yeah, the photo I didn't manage to dig up, which I wanted to, was there's the shot when Indy has got a rocket launcher and he's pointing it down into the canyon at the Nazis carrying the Ark. That actual bit of canyon is the bit where R2-D2 gets shot by the Jawas.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
There's one of our American friends there taking a snap of the same area that we just showed you. It's got blue frontage now on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a marketplace.
It's funny because that's also famous for the guy who played Belloc swallowing a fly, isn't it? That scene that you mentioned. Yeah,
he swallowed a fly.
In the film, you see him swallowing the fly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those with us, Terry. I mean, it is unmistakable as the same place, isn't it, Keith?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of it hasn't changed. As I saw in the shot with the doorway, where I was posing with the hat, the doors and everything's exactly the same, and we're all sitting there going, "Do you reckon if we offered the homeowner like a couple of $100 dinars, we could unscrew the door and take it home with us again?" Film memorabilia.
We talked a little earlier on, just a little about Karen Allen, but every time I see Raiders of the Lost Ark or watch a behind the scenes feature, I'm always so impressed by her all over again. As Marion, she has the unenviable task, I suppose, of standing shoulder to shoulder with Harrison Ford in this career-making role, and she comes out of it so well that now when I see it, it's difficult to understand why the character didn't reappear in the next movie, why they chose to do the prequel in.
Yeah, it was because of George. George wanted Indiana Jones to be like James Bond, that he had a different damsel. Yeah, Damsel in Distress was the next one, and then the other one was just he didn't really he had his dad in the last one. But
I suppose, Ian, you're no doubt about who the star of this film is. I'm not suggesting otherwise. It's not like a Romancing the Stone where it's Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas and double top billing. But I can't imagine Raiders without Karen Allen either.
Well, there was a rumor that Spielberg he wasn't scared, but he basically realized that it would be more work if he actually hired people that were actually either TV stars or movie stars. In fact, he never directed real movie stars until Hook, when he made Hook. So Karen Allen was relatively new, and I think she'd done a lot of stage stuff. But if you look at all the other people that were up for the Marion parts, they were TV stars. They were known actresses. Oh, okay. And Spielberg always used to shy away from known TV people because he didn't want the stress on set. He used to focus on new people. So in his words, you can manipulate them because they were new and they were hungry. And Spielberg's always hungry for film, so he can actually direct them properly. He says if you had a star, then you're fighting against them, you're whatever, because he's seen it in other movies. So, but that was the rumor, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like it's true.
I'm just looking at her filmography here, and before Raiders of the Lost Ark, she did East of Eden, which is a TV series, A Small Circle of Friends, which is TV, Knots Landing, television actress, something called Manhattan, a TV movie. And before that, National Lampoon's Animal House in 1978.
That's great.
So after Raiders,
I didn't know she did
after Raiders, Starman in 1984. So
that Christmas film, what was it with Bill Murray? She was in that
Scrooged.
one.
Oh, Scrooged.
Yeah.
She.
I was going to say that it looks like this kind of killed a career, but maybe it didn't. I don't know.
No, she was also in Space Camp, and
she was.
Yeah,
she was.
I know all the movies. She to me is she's like Carrie Fisher to so many guys. To me, Karen Allen all the way. I have friends. Strangely, I have a couple of friends that look like her. So I don't.
Can you
I don't know why, I do not tell. But anyway, so yeah, when I saw her in the later films, I was so glad to see her back. And when Harrison Ford said, well, they weren't, the girls were, you've been with lots of other women, and he's like, honey, they weren't you. And I love that line. I just like, yep, no one ever beats Marion. Sorry.
It's not a two-dimensional character, though, is it, Wendy? She's not a contrived female presence like we see in modern films, I believe. This is a fully rounded, multi-layered character with a very specific relation to the lead, and also who's grounded too, and is of her own value and worth within the story, isn't she, and all the locations.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's so realistic because there's no ego there. There's no damsel in distress type stereotype. She just gets in there and
that may be the function. That may be the function in the story, Wendy, but it's not written like that, is it? It's not, and it's certainly not performed like that.
No, not at all. She's brilliant. She was definitely a character that I absolutely loved at the time because she'd get in there and whack somebody over the head with a frying pan. She just wouldn't take any crap.
Strong female,
and it's not that she's being a feisty woman, is it? It's the fact that if somebody's trying to kidnap you or whatever, you would, anybody would, whether they're a man or a woman, you would just give them a whack.
So you're going to see when look after herself, but she was also clearly, she wasn't she wasn't nasty. She wasn't like unlikable. She was extremely likable. She was vivacious and funny, could drink that great big oaf under the table. Which was a great thing.
There is no better introduction for a female character than hers. It's absolutely knocked me out.
I was just thinking that.
As a kid, I watched it, I was like, oh, she's trying to outdrink this guy, because I didn't even know it was her tavern or whatever. And she's like, oh, I can't do it, and everyone starts passing the money over. And she just like turns the glass upside down and bashes it on the table. And I was like, this girl kicks ass. And then when Indy turns up, she walks up to him and just punches him in the face. I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
I love the shadows on the wall and stuff. They're fantastic, aren't they? The shadows.
And if it was done nowadays, she'd say something to belittle Indy rather than, just say. It would all be.
And also, I think that the relationship between them, is quite nuanced. And you won't get it when you're a kid.
Dodgy.
The fact that they have been in a relationship in the past.
I was a child.
That he clearly wronged her in some way.
Bit dodgy.
I don't get in. You know me. I don't get into those discussions because they're neither here nor there. What's on screen is what counts. I don't go for all that Twitter nonsense. What I'm talking about is when people have baggage of relationships that maybe have failed, and then they go back to them, they reconnect with them because she's got an arc all of her own, Keith.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, she completely holds her own in this film. The character, can fight, can handle machine guns, can she can do the whole kit in this. She's an equal. I feel like she's kind of an equal to Indy rather than a. Just a screaming damsel in distress, which obviously we get in the next movie. But
it's not that she doesn't scream, because again, anybody would scream. I'd scream, Terry, would you?
Well, being in the middle of a bunch of skulls,
I would. Wendy,
I do remember a lot of Karen going, Andy, she's getting dragged away and stuff. But she's right up there with Sigourney Weaver. You know that she's going to give as good as she gets, kind of thing. It's
that scene in the tent, I love that scene in the tent with Bollock, and like he's trying to make her wear that. He's trying to make her wear that. You got it. That's good. She's trying to wear. He's trying to get her to wear that dress, and she's like, oh, okay, sure. And then she slips the fork.
Yeah,
and they also come under her sleeve, and I just love that scene.
The drinking, didn't they? That she could drink the guy under the table, so she's having a drinking. Oh, it's brilliant.
But it's the first time.
He was a great character. This guy.
Yeah, it's the first time.
Lacy, isn't it?
Yeah, the first time I realized the Spielberg winner when I went to see this film originally,
What's
I
a
realized
one?
that he was.
What's a one?
So basically, a one
I
is
know what it is.
yeah, it's
They
an
might not know.
unbroken shot that features several shots in it. Like for instance, the scene where the drinking game they have. So they start off in a wide shot, and the camera pushes in straight into her face, and then it follows her hand as she plants the glass on the table. So that's a wide, and then it's a one shot, and then the camera pans to the other guy, and that's another one shot, and then he falls down, and then that's the shot finished. It's all in one.
But there's no
it's an
edits.
unbroken shot. Yeah, there's no editing. It's all. So that's one. If you look at Jaws, he does it a lot. He does it a lot in Close Encounters. He does it a lot in most of his films. That's when I realized that he was special in as a young kid. But yeah, sorry, I digress slightly. So yeah, carry on.
Ronald Lacey made for a fantastic villain, didn't he? And he was
He
a
was marvelous.
theatre and television actor from the UK for the most part. He'd been in all sorts of things, from Minder to Porridge.
Jason
all that.
King.
Yeah, those kind of
Sapphire
shows.
and
He
Steel.
was in Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads. Yes,
No
he was in
way.
Sapphire and Steel too. He's been in
Right.
lots and lots and lots of things. And so was Pat Roach from
Yeah.
Warsaw, just up the road from me. He was the big guy who were in. Well, he's in all three of the 80s Indiana Jones films, isn't he? But in this one, he plays the big guy on the airfield, doesn't he? Who
He actually
fights
plays
him with the
two,
plane.
he plays two roles in this.
Oh, does he?
He's
He does.
the hairy guy in the Raven bar.
Yep.
Okay.
That Indy hits with the chair. He's that guy, and he's also the bald mechanic in the airplane. So yeah, he gets a double role in this film. Yeah.
He used to go to a gym not far from my school, and I'd see him from a distance, but I saw him up close the once not long before he died. He was quite an old guy. He died about 15 years ago, something like that, and he was still one of the biggest blokes I've ever seen in my life. He was absolutely massive there on the far right there.
I love
Ronald Lacey.
Pet. I love
Yes, he was good.
Bomber in Ovida Zane Pet. What a great character.
Ivy Bomber.
Ivy Bomber.
And Rhys Davis, of course, still very much with us, isn't he?
Sliders and everything else.
Yeah, yes, he is. He lost a lot of weight, hasn't he?
Lord of the Rings, all that kind of caper.
Of course,
So to say that Raiders of the Lost Ark was a success is sort of putting it mildly, isn't it? It was a huge hit.
Wasn't it lightning in a bottle, though? I mean, you've got Spielberg, Lucas, Ben Burt, John Williams, Harrison Ford, and it's like, how could it not be a massive success?
Well, we've not talked about that theme tune. Bloody hell!
Oh yeah,
one of the greatest theme tunes, as far as I'm concerned, better than Star Wars.
It's the soundtrack to adventure, isn't it? You know, You think of that, even if you're running down to the shops to get a packet of a toilet roll before the shop shuts, and you're jumping over things.
But that's really true. I mean, it's become such a well-known tune that we do. We sort of, it's now incorporated into our sort of psyche. Anytime you're in a situation like that, you sort of envision Indy, or with the big, boulder chasing him down the thing where you have to get through from one end to the other. So yeah, it's really embedded itself.
And the film also, it spawned countless satires
rip-offs
and shows. Like Bring Them Back Alive. Do you remember that? It was
with Bruce Boxleitner,
yeah.
Tales of the Golden Monkey. All these shows. What
was interesting about those shows? They never captured what Raiders did. I mean, I watched recently. I watched Tales of the Golden Monkey, and it's so slow. They don't get the idea that Indiana Jones is a fast-paced action movie. None of them.
But they actually made that before this movie, apparently.
No. They made it after it. They made it after it.
Because I did hear that it was. I remember they were saying, "Oh no, it was already in production when this came out."
I don't. Well, High Road to China is slow as well.
A friend of mine poured a little bit of scorn on Raiders, and he's not wrong. He basically said But Indy doesn't do anything in the film. He's more of a passive observer because he loses the Ark, and at the very end he doesn't defeat the Nazis. It gets taken off him, and he's like,
I hear this all the time, that if Indy hadn't have been there, all this would have gone down. And it's completely, and I'm not being no slight on your friend, but it's said a lot of the time by smart asses.
My friend's definitely a smart ass.
It was
who
used in
missed the
Big Bang
point.
theory, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a topic of the Big Bang theory when he shows
Sheldon.
Sheldon's
girlfriend. Yeah,
and she turns around and says,
"It's the ride." That's what.
Maybe that's where he got it from. But that's the point. It's nothing to do with it. He's not Superman. It's more. It's like, John McClane from Die Hard must have been inspired by Indy Jones because he's human. He gets punched in the face a lot. He loses.
But it keeps.
It's
But
more
he
exciting
keeps going. He persists.
It's more exciting when you know your character can get hurt, and he makes mistakes and he gets things wrong. And that bit in the middle when the lorry blows up and he thinks Marion's dead, that's brilliant. And you're like, oh goodness me, she's blown up.
Yeah. He's relatable. He's just a
better than,
relatable hero.
"Hey, I'm just perfect. Nothing goes wrong for me." Like he's not.
And for Harrison Ford, it's enabled him as well. The one persona never conflicted with the other one. He can be Han Solo at the same time as he's Indiana Jones. It's absolutely fine. Neither interferes with the other. Whereas Roger Moore, he played the Saint, and then he was James Bond with a few.
Nobody wanted to go and see For Eyes Only.
The Indiana Jones character obviously was picked up, as you would expect. We saw some commercials earlier on with toys, licensing deals, and there were comic books as well. There was the official Marvel adaptation of Raiders of the Lost Ark with wonderful covers by Walt Simonson, the comic book legend. And Mad Magazine, of course, paid tribute, as you would expect, as they always used to do. And over here in the UK, the Indiana Jones Adventures, there was pin-ups and fact files and all the rest of it in magazines like Look-In and the TV Times. They very much went for all of that too. I think there could have been a sticker album from Panini. Probably.
When you think about it, though, at that moment in time, the only films that had action all the way was Bond. And then when, because there are other action movies, but they always had a lull. True. Either in the front of the film or in the middle of the film. It wasn't relentless. So I think Indiana Jones was
it was like a first film.
It was relentless. It stopped in the middle a bit, but then it just kept going and going until it got to the ending. It was relentless action movie, and James Bond, I think, was the only one that did that at the time. So it's really weird how they didn't catch on after James Bond. Weird, but Indiana Jones is something that I'll always remember with fondness as a kid, especially the first one.
Maybe it needed to take the time that it did. For this, we talked at the top of the show about how it was a deliberate homage in the way that Star Wars, it was partly homaging all of those things. The time had to be right for the first wave of big movie nostalgia for a bygone age. Maybe up until that point, it was always pushing forward. And at this time, filmmakers who'd grown up with movies being taken by their parents, probably for the first time, were able to go back and kind of recreate, but sort of write them a lot larger. That, I think it's happened. I don't think it's ever really stopped since. Come to think of it.
Well, recently,
the original one.
Yeah, recently they've been going back in the past and trying to recreate that thing. But at that moment in time, Raiders and Star Wars was the only one that was actually taking something from the past and bringing it to modern day. If you look at the other films that came out that year, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, they were all new stuff. They weren't trying to copy the past; they were trying to create new stuff for that era. So it's only now that they're going backwards and digging the well deep to find anything.
But they're changing it. They're changing it to the point where it's unrecognizable, though. Too. Ian.
Yeah. I agree.
So
I agree.
There's a difference between updating and a matter of rewriting the cinema history.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose.
I love that poster.
Yeah, the
God,
poster.
iconic.
I mean, I remember there's so many great posters for Raiders of the Lost Ark, painted by various different artists. This is this is Amsel. So this is an artist that I recognise his work. Slightly more cartoony than Drew Struzan's stuff.
I think that's my favourite one. That one.
Yeah, it's so right for Indiana Jones. I think, Terry.
Yeah,
absolutely wonderful. But yeah,
I had that on my wall at film school.
Did you?
Did you?
Yeah, in my small dorm. Yes.
So sequels were inevitable, weren't they? And eventually there were two more in the 80s alone, which we'll probably get together and talk about at some point. Slightly different in flavour and positioned at one in 84, one in 89. So we had a bit of a wait in between for them. And then, of course, there was another sequel that came out in 2008, a tardy sequel, you could describe it as. And we are at the moment awaiting a fifth Indiana Jones, which at some point is going to get released. I think the release dates that are moving around a little. The first one not to be directed by Steven Spielberg. That's James Mangold that's doing that, and shrouded in secrecy, as you would expect. But that will be Harrison Ford's last time in that part.
Thank God.
Probably his most identifiable role still. I think he's very much part of, with Star Wars, he's very much part of a greater thing, isn't he? But Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. And I can't really imagine it. I can't imagine it without him.
They're doing a lot of it with what do you call it? That what you did earlier with the Tom Selleck thing. They're doing the whole thing with on his face, you know, on another actor's. Because he broke his leg or something, didn't he? Again.
Okay. I don't really know, to be honest. I'm deliberately not reading anything about that film because I don't want to get sort of.
No, because they had to put it off for a while, but they ended up having to film without him, so they got someone that had the same body type.
Oh, bless you!
Sneaky sneeze.
I was untyped.
What I love about Harrison Ford, though, very quickly, is that he is indie both on and off the screen in a way, because he was always crashing his plane all the time, wasn't he? Like he'd crash his plane, and he'd just get out and be like, yeah, whatever, brush himself off. So he's had injuries and things like that. So it is. I did find that amusing that he flies his own planes, and he is very indie like, really.
Yeah, I wonder if you can still work that whip, I suppose. I wouldn't like to be around to find out. If he's as handy with the whip as he had with the plane, then it could be.
He didn't look too bad in that film, did he? He didn't look too bad in that one.
Real movie star.
Yeah, he is.
Obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Indiana Jones series is available on Blu-ray, 4K, DVD. You can probably still get
Laserdisc.
It's sold so much on VHS. You can probably get those in every second-hand or charity shop if you have a look through the little drawers that they've got. Yeah, I've got my DVD box set here. This definitely needs an upgrade. It's only got the first 3 films in one disc. You
only need the first 3 films.
I don't hold you. Don't get me. You won't get me into that argument here.
Excuse me. I like that film.
Any copy of Raiders?
I went and saw it twice in the cinema.
I don't own
VHS. Show your VHS. Let's get Ian's VHS up.
Look at that.
Like crap.
Wow.
Wow.
Hold on. One more.
Oh my God.
And then the making of. There we go. Look, there you go.
Oh, I didn't know you got that as well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Wonderful stuff.
I'll never get rid of this.
It was also out on Laserdisc, everybody, but as Keith so kindly informed us earlier on, that is included the making of Indiana Jones, the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that great movie stunts special that came out alongside it. Both of those are available on this in the current box set that you can get with the films up to present day in there, and God knows what other extras. Is it quite generous on the extras front there, Keith? You're the home media guy.
It's not too bad. It's not. I mean, Spielberg doesn't do commentaries, and it's not as comprehensive as some releases. But it's the extras that are there are decent, and they've got both vintage ones and ones that were produced around the time that the
awesome.
the DVD and Blu-rays were released. So it's not bad. It's not bad. Could be
Fantastic
better,
stuff.
but not bad.
Yes, let's go and have one last check-in with the people watching in the chat at the end of our adventure and see what they've got to say for themselves. Hold on. Oh, Peter Harrington, he's got peckish. Terry's chocolate orange. He fancies one of those.
Not Terry's, it's mine.
Yeah. There we are.
There you go.
What else have we got here? We've got a comment here from Kev, Doctor Who fan man, who says, Terry, I'm loving your Marvin videos.
Oh, thanks, Kev. Yeah, thanks. Glad someone's watching them.
and adds Indiana Jones and the Deli Belly. There,
Yeah,
reference to the story about the old upset stomachs that we heard earlier on.
Yeah.
So many baskets, says Carol
that
Jude.
was
And she also compliments you on your photos there too, Terry. Those are great photos. That
It
must have
was.
been so much fun.
Apart from the dysentery.
Deli Belly.
Now that's racist. Come on.
No, it was Tunisia, so it was. I don't know what you call it. I mean,
And a comment here on Karen Allen, feisty and fun. A 40s Catherine Hepburn type.
Do you know, that's really
yeah, I get that.
That's perfectly
Yeah, she
set.
was.
Yeah, I like that.
She had great freckles.
Best freckles. Kev also says, my mum hates snakes and I forgot to tell her. Screams a go-go. So yeah, that would have disturbed other people at that
They
showing
were
there.
just a few. Yeah.
Bomber.
Yeah, Peter Harrington asks, was Pat Roach a wrestler too?
He
Yes,
was.
He was.
He
All
was.
sorts of things.
Saturday mornings he used to be on the World of Sport.
World of Sport, that's right.
Yeah.
Talking about the theme tune earlier on there, Matt, and Carl, the classic 80s fanboy, says, I used to play the theme a lot in our concerts when he was in the Marines.
Yeah, I could
Stir
have that thing
people to
on
go into action.
Got it.
on repeat all day, you know.
Yeah.
I could. I honestly
It's
could.
got-
I
it's
could
got
do my
all of them on
entire
it.
day like that, like going to work and everything.
The whole film, the whole music from the film, every last beat on this.
It's
on this
all in
CD.
there.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
all
the
on this
Well of
one.
Souls.
It's all on this one. Look. Oh,
song, yeah, well,
hello. You can't even
Is
see
that
it.
a
Yeah.
new release or is that an original one? It
No,
came
I
out
got
at the
this
time on vinyl, didn't
10
it?
years ago. 10 years
Yeah.
ago. I've got the
It's still
vinyl, which is
available.
down there somewhere, but I had to get it because on the vinyl it's only got a few tracks from the film, but this has got all of the music from the film. This one also has got an interview with John Williams on it as well, and it's got a little booklet in there, which I don't like handling it too much, but it's one here as well. So I want to
I
keep
saw
it
a
pristine.
poster once.
Yeah.
I saw a poster once, actually signed by Karen Allen and Harrison Ford.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, yeah, it was expensive. That was actually, that was in a prop store. So in America.
The last comment has to be Carol.
mine,
She says that music is like the unofficial national anthem of wherever you are.
You are, yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine's selling a Karen Allen signed picture right now.
Is he?
Yeah.
There you go, Matt.
From Raiders.
Yeah,
that's one for you, mate.
I met another guy. He was a massive Indiana Jones fan, and he had all the I think he even had a prop from it. But yeah, no, he had signed photos of Harrison Ford.
I mean, guys from London, do you remember Keith and Terry? I'm talking to now. Do you remember those shops where they used to sell photographs of famous stars?
Yeah,
they used to be like they had 3 in London, in central London,
They
and they
still
had.
got-
Have they still got them,
They've got
Terry?
one in Cardiff.
Oh, really?
I only see the
One
sports
photo.
ones.
But they used to have some signed by the actors. didn't
Yeah,
they?
with
I
the,
remember when in one
figure
store,
of
Michael
authenticity.
Caine one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were terrific. Those
Caine.
stores.
Yeah,
They've all gone now.
they
but-
were.
I think some of them
They're
went mail order, but maybe they don't exist at all anymore. I don't know. I used to go to the collectors' fairs at the NEC before they became all called sort of the Comic Cons. They just call everything Comic Con now. There was always a lot of prints available at places like that.
Yeah, you can still get them at those sort of things. Yeah.
My thanks to everybody who's watched and listened on YouTube and Facebook and dropped us some comments there. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. We're going to head back to the main channel now and close it all out. Yes, the hero is he was back and back again and then back again, and the whip and the fedora, as we've said, this is a legendary movie character, and maybe in time somebody will play Indiana Jones again. I don't know, but for the moment,
I hope so.
It's it's hard to say, isn't it? Hard to say, but for now, I think it's quite right that we can sort of relish the nostalgia of going back to these films over and over again, whether it be just watching the films themselves or little oddities like the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm really glad I watched it, and I'm really happy you guys came to talk about it too. Have you got anything you'd like to plug while we're here? Let's start with Keith.
Yeah, sure. My YouTube channel, Home Media Minefield. We look at physical media, unboxings, reviews, etc. But we also, off the side of that, we have Let's See What's Out There, which is a podcast stroke video stream where we talk about Star Trek Picard. And tomorrow, I'm really pleased. I've got a special guest coming on to talk about the animated next gen video that's doing the rounds on YouTube. Yeah, I've got
Very nice.
the creator of that coming on tomorrow. In fact, this time tomorrow to discuss about the making of that.
Is it official?
Huh?
Is it official, or is it just a fan?
No,
fan made.
Fan episode.
No, it's a fan.
So well
He
done.
did
All
it
right.
as a bit of a
Very
love
well
letter
done.
to him.
Very well
So
done.
It's fantastically done. Yeah. So yeah, that's on Home Media Minefield on YouTube. Thank you.
Excellent.
Terry, we had a comment earlier on about your adventures with Marvin. What are you doing, and where are you doing it, and where can people catch up with you on social media and your various projects?
On the chat, I'm known as Terry on Tuesday because that's the name of my YouTube channel, and it's being Tuesday. I've been the last few weeks. I've been working as hard as I can to finish my full-size BBC era Hitchhiker's Marvin costume, which I'll be wearing at when I'm hosting the Cardiff International Tattoo Con at the end of July in Cardiff.
Tattoo Con.
Yeah,
Wow.
and David Lerner. It's a convention. There's over 200 artists there tattooing constantly all day. But there's also merchandise and artwork and sculptures and cosplayers and stuff. It's a really good weekend. And David Lerner, who played Marvin, is the guest of honor this year. So.
Cool.
It'd be like looking in the mirror, won't it? Looking in the mirror. Fascinating stuff. So you go and find Terry on Tuesday or any other day of the week. It's a good day to subscribe to Terry on Tuesday. Where can people hear more of you? You're working away, aren't you, on scary stuff a lot of the time?
Yeah, well, I'm streaming Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays. Saturdays and Wednesdays, I'm on PJ Maybe's channel, where we just sort of have a very sort of wide-ranging chat on all things geeky, anything that sort of strikes our fancy for the week. Wednesdays, we usually pick a film, and we start off talking about that, and then just the conversation takes us where it will. And on Sundays, I'm doing the B-Movie Cinema Show, where we look at quite a lot of horror-themed classic movies, but also other classic films and things like that. We just finished recording a review of it just aired last Sunday, which was the Sherlock Holmes Terror by Night with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, which was fun.
Nice.
And so we're on YouTube, but we're also on Odyssey now as well, under the B-Movie Cinema Show. So that's been really fun.
B-Movie Cinema Show, awesome.
Cinema Show. Okay.
How about you, Matt? What's going on with the Naughty Boy?
Oh, yes. Well, I do have a show called The Naughty Boy. I've just returned after a bit of hiatus. And I've recently done a video. I'm sort of taking a leaf out of Keith's book and trying to steal it. And I did an actual comparison with the worldwide Doctor Who releases on the Blu-ray. There are different types of Amaray cases and all that sort of thing. So I delve into that. So there'll be more of it coming very soon. Yeah. So that's you can just follow me.
I've got my lawyer on.
Matt Pop.
Lawyer's on the phone. Hold on.
I'll only do it the once, I promise.
And what's going on? What's going on in the Megaverse with you?
Oh God. No, well, as I said, I'm trying to get Rebecca Gull 2 off the ground. I'm still trying to do that. I had some major stumbling blocks, but hopefully it'll be all cleared up by the end of this week, and I can go full steam ahead. You can see Rebecca Gold obviously on the Rebecca Gold channel, which is on YouTube. It's a web series. There's 5 parts, and they're not very long, so it's not much of a chore. I also got my feature films on there, which, as far as I'm concerned, they're good films. Give it a watch, give them a watch, and enjoy yourself. But Rebecca 2 is coming, but you probably won't see it till next year anyway, because it's going to take the rest of this year to make the damn thing. So wish me luck. That's all I can say, and check out my channel. Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for joining me. The hero will return, and so will we, to talk about more out there entertainment. We'll be watching something or other, whenever, however, but we'll tell you more about that when we're about to drop it. Thanks to everybody who's watched and listened and commented along with this show. Take care. We'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.